Hey everybody, Gary Glass here once again. We're getting to the last few chapters in the 12 Miracles of Life by Napoleon Hill. We're all the way into chapter 9, which is on the transmutation of the creative force of sex and moving that sexual energy to other constructive things as well. And this is, I think, part 3, and we've gotten up to a little bit of a discussion of Hill suggesting that perhaps there's a need for a school of marriage, and he's going to be listing off the ideas of what ought to be taught at the school of marriage. So we'll dive right in. Schools of marriage should give students a thorough analysis of the following subjects. So, number one, a complete description of the purposes of the sexual relation, as herein stated, with a detailed statement of the technique which will enable the partners to rise to the highest degree of ecstasy during the engagement and reach a climax at approximately the same moment. Timing is very important, and it calls for a complete understanding of both partners. During my 20 years of research in the organization of the science of success, I had the privilege of working closely with more than 500 of the top-ranking successful men and women in America. It became quite obvious that the main difference between these successful people and the average run of people who never attained noteworthy success consisted in the fact that they were highly sexed and they had learned the art of sex transmutation. And then in parentheses, he says here, sex transmutation is reference to the individual's habit of directing the profound creative forces of sex emotion to the attainment of his occupation, aims, and plans, and receiving from his success achievements the same gratification he would have received from a sexual climax had his energies been directed to that end. That's more like what I'd read in Think and Grow Rich. This statement does not mean that the individual must practice sexual abstinence, except at such times as he may desire to temporarily direct his creative force to other ends than intercourse through physical contact. Mind conditioning for any purpose whatsoever is most quickly and effectively attained during sexual intercourse. That was mind conditioning. There is no other time or circumstance which equals it, a statement which can be easily verified by experiment. Let it be emphasized, however, that both parties to the transaction must be in perfect harmony. Both must practice and self-discipline at the beginning. Okay, so that was about understanding the complete description of the purposes of the sexual relation. So now number 2 in this school of marriage, what suggested study, instructions on the importance of the time, the place, and the physical environment in preparation for sexual engagement. Number 3, a complete program on home economy, including the budgeting of income and expenses with an allowance for the wife's personal spending, which does not need to be accounted for. No wife will long respect a husband who is so unthoughtful of her financial needs that she is forced to steal a little change from his pockets while he sleeps, or has to hold out a few nickels and dimes from the egg and butter money in order that she may have a few unmentionables or hair products or hair ribbons. Yeah, it's got to be budgeted. It's got to be in the budget. The other thing that I would suggest with that is you need to have a good home budget anyway in order to have the peace of mind, in order to have a good sexual relationship between man and wife. Subject number 4, a complete training in social relations so that no unnecessary social obligations are incurred. Particular emphasis should be focused on the necessity for care in the selection of social acquaintances. So in just reading that just now, it seems as though you don't want to have social acquaintances with anybody that's going to make the other partner jealous at all. Number 5, training in the proper method of blending the minds of the husband and wife in a mastermind alliance, as described in the Science of Success. This portion of the marriage school training might well eliminate one of the major causes for dissension in marriages, namely the lack of adequate financial means. So there we go. We're kind of back to the finances like we were in number 4. Number 6, an elementary course in biology, which, if properly presented, would remove that old false notion that all forms of sexual relation are sinful. Every person, whether married or single, should have at least an elementary working knowledge of the great creative forces of sex. As a matter of fact, this knowledge should be imparted to children at a very early age, and thus saving them from getting their sex information from unreliable and unsavory sources, which often makes of sex a hush-hush subject and a thing of indecency instead of a profound creative device with which all living things are perpetuated. All right. Number 7, extensive training in the psychology of child management, including instructions on how to secure discipline with the full, enthusiastic cooperation of the child instead of commanding it by fear and by threat. Training number 8, training on how young couples should relate themselves to their relatives and in-laws. And finally, number 9, instructions on how husband and wife should relate themselves to each other on the subject of religion, where their respective religions are of a different denomination. Yeah, I had a couple of friends that were different denominations, and they didn't talk about it beforehand, and it ended up driving a wedge between them that was, frankly, my opinion, was just unnecessary. Anyway, schools of marriage might well become a function of the churches, since this would remove from them the suspicion that they may, in some instances, been inadequately chaperoned, or there might be an adjunct to the public school system. We are living in an age when man has mastered the air above us and the sea beneath us. He has revealed the principle of radio, radar, the X-ray, the telephone, and wireless means of communication, and he has isolated and conquered many of the sources of physical and mental ailments. But with all of his relations of the secrets of nature, man has not yet fully explored or availed himself of the great creative forces of sex, nor of the boundless potentialities of the human mind. And the layman or the scientist who discovers the stupendous possibilities of individual achievement by means of coordination of the principle of sex and the control of the mind, will give the world a new birth in the form of a new and a better system of human relations, including a simple technique by which an individual may quickly condition his mind for the attainment of any desired purpose. We have learned a lot about machines, guns, and explosives with which whole cities may be wiped out instantly. But the greatest of all forces, mental dynamite, and that was in quotes, is yet to be explored and adapted to man's struggle for existence. Life may be a magnificent interlude of joyous growth and unfoldment, which the Creator probably intended it to be, or a period of misery and maladjustment in human relations, with a flock of worries as the payoff for the struggles we make in order to live. The deciding factor as to which of this life shall be is under the control of the individual, and it represents the most profound of all the gifts of the Creator. It consists of controlling his own mind, which is the irrevocable privilege every individual has. And honest and true, all of these studies all end up going back to just, do you have control of your own mind? And in having control of your own mind, do you have control of your emotions? Do you have control of your body? So good. So we wind up this, that's the end of this chapter. And at the end of each chapter, we end up with a quote, sometimes from Think and Grow Rich, sometimes from other books. Today, we're having a quote from a book that was only published maybe 10 or so years ago, called Outwitting the Devil, which Hill actually wrote back in the late 1930s. However, he and his wife did not think that that our society was ready for it. It being a a lot of that book being a conversation between Hill and the devil, uh, trying to understand how the devil took over men and women's minds. So, really a great read. If you're interested, go get it. Go get it today. You'll be glad you did. So, the quote from Outwitting the Devil is this. Hill wrote, "Time is the friend of the person who trains his mind to follow positive thought habits, and the enemy of the person who drifts into negative thought habits," which really does kind of have the overlay of what Outwitting the Devil is really all about. And that is, how does the devil take control of a person? By getting them to drift, not knowing what they want. The magic of having a beautiful life, the magic of living your dream life, it really is. It really is just understanding what you want. And then from there, once you really know what you want, to be certain to go and make a plan to go get it and then get into action. It's as simple as that. And those people that do typically are end up being extremely successful, and those that don't, I don't know, they're just following the crowd. They're in the 95% of those just conforming to nonsense. So, all righty. Well, that's going to do it for today. Tomorrow we'll start in with chapter 10, and chapter 10 is all about time, nature's universal cure for all human ills. And so we'll start chapter 10 tomorrow. And after 10, we'll only have two more and then an appendix, and we'll be done with the book. So probably maybe by the end of next week, we'll be done with the book and we'll move on to something else. So, as I love to say, God bless you, God bless me, God bless us, everyone. Here's what we've been reading: The 12 Miracles of Life. Choose a miracle for yourself and go make it happen. Let it happen for you. And I can't wait to hear that if and when it has. All right, everybody. God bless you. We'll see you soon. Bye bye.